You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Okay, I think I have a solid pitch for filming an unfilmable book.
Oh, which one? War and Peace?
No.
The Silmarillion.
No.
At the Mountains of Madness?
Yes. I mean, no.
Goodnight Moon.
This could go on forever.
Webster's Dictionary, technically that's a book.
The Haynes Manual for a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, let's just start the show.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies as suggested by you. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing 2012's Cloud Atlas.
So, we had a poll up on the website, and we were like, here's 3 movies that were suggested to us. One of them was Live Free and Die Hard. Sorry, Live Free or Die Hard, a movie that I don't particularly want to watch again. Wing Commander, a famously terrible sci-fi B-movie, and Cloud Atlas. And y'all voted for Cloud Atlas. And let me tell you, thank you, because it made all 3 of us watch a great movie.
Yeah,
this is great.
I'm gonna say something perhaps controversial here. I don't think we should have done this movie for the show. I think it was a bad idea. I started watching this movie, and I you guys had said it was 3 hours long, and I was like, ugh. I had already seen it, and like for some reason, my memories of it weren't great, and I'm not particularly sure why. I think maybe it's because I'm just a better film watcher now. Cloud Atlas is the kind of movie that's just like full of like pulling metaphors out and meaning and stuff like that, and that's something I'm much better at doing now, especially thanks to doing this show for 6 years. But I sat down to watch it thinking I was going to do it in shifts, and I was so riveted that I just blasted right through it. It is a great film that clips on at a wonderful pace.
I wonder if you're not the only one who sort of has matured. I think maybe collectively the world wasn't ready for this flick in 2012 because the tomato meter, it has got an equal 66 tomato meter and audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It is everyone agrees this movie is a 66%, 2/3 good, and I just don't think that's the case. I think it's genuinely good, and I really wonder if it was maybe like, cliched as it sounds, ahead of its time, or just too ambitious for whatever the dum-dums in 2012 were gobbling up. They were too excited for the Avengers to really want to give this movie a fair shake, because it really reminded me of a lot of the themes of Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it's no Everything Everywhere All at Once, but damn if it doesn't like... It is trafficked in some of the same themes, and I wonder if everyone should have given this more credit when it came out.
Yeah, leave it to the Wachowskis to come out with a heady and ambitious science fiction movie.
Yeah.
That everybody doesn't get.
Until years later.
Where it's like, oh, right.
Because I wrote this off. I remember when the reviews were bad when it came out, so I just skipped it. And I wish I had. I mean, I'm glad we watched it for the podcast, but I kind of wish I hadn't. But maybe I wouldn't have liked it then, and I have the frame of reference for it now, like you were saying, Greg.
Yeah, it's interesting my how I felt about it, how I feel about it now compared to then. I watched this in the theater when it first came out, and I just kind of remember being like mediocre on it. I definitely didn't hate it. I mean, like I've said this before on the show, but like I'm never bored watching a Wachowski film, like even the ones that I don't particularly like I did not like Speed Racer, like everyone else seems to, but you know, I was still kind of like in love with like watching it for all the capital C choices it was making, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's lots of choices in this movie. Some of them are great. Some of them, clearly not so great, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
there's definitely some problematic choices in this movie.
Yeah.
Of course, came out in 2012, directed by Tom Tykwer of Run Lola Run fame, Lana Wachowski and Lily Wachowski, written for the screen by Lana Wachowski and Tom Tykwer. Based on a novel, Cloud Atlas, by David Mitchell. I have to assume not the same David Mitchell from That Mitchell and Webb look. Are we the baddies? David Mitchell's probably a pretty common name. Starring just an absolute murderer's row of notable actors: Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Hugh Grant, Hugo Weaving, Jim Broadbent, Jim Sturgis, Bay Duna, Ben Winshaw, Keith David, and James Darcy.
Ben Whishaw.
What did I say?
Winshaw.
Winshaw, great. I was kind of banging him through. Ben Whishaw.
Whishaw.
Isn't that the thing that dogs do in the Starlight Barking? Anyway, no.
Ben Whishaw, famously Paddington Bear.
Oh, dope.
Although probably more people would recognize him as Q from the more recent James Bond movies. But yeah. Keith David, always a delight. Great to see him here.
Yeah, I think everyone has a lot of fun getting to play all the different characters.
And many of them playing very distinctive characters through the different time periods as well. So, like, it's interesting to see Tom Hanks playing so many very different kinds of people through the different periods. And Halle Berry and weirdly Hugo Weaving kind of playing the same character through every time period. Poor Hugh Grant and Hugo Weaving are a villain no matter what time period they're in, apparently.
I love Tom Hanks, the gangster. That was probably one of my favorite bits.
You mean the author?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
the gangster / author. Yeah.
Well, let's go to the trailer and start unpacking this bad boy, because hoo boy, there's a lot going on here.
That's it. The music from my dream.
There are whole movements I wrote imagining us meeting again and again in different lives, in different ages.
I can't explain it, but I knew when I opened that door.
A powerful deja vu ran through my bones.
I heard it in a dream. I was in a nightmarish cafe, and the waitresses, they all had the same face.
No reason to hide. I know you are Sonmi 451.
Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present. And by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future.
I won't let you go again. I believe there is another world waiting for us, a better world. And I'll be waiting for you there.
A 19th century lawyer wrestles with his conscience when a stowaway slave sneaks into his cabin. 1930s English composer Robert Frobisher leaves his lover Rufus Sixsmith to work with famed musician Vivian Ayers, leading to Frobisher composing his own masterpiece, the Cloud Atlas Sextet. In 1970s, San Francisco journalist Louisa Ray is tipped off by now nuclear physicist Sixsmith about a ploy by Big Oil to purposely allow a nuclear power plant to melt down. In 2012, Timothy Cavendish leads a greedy, selfish life as a publisher, earning the ire of the mob and his brother, who tricks him into committing himself into a nursing home. Now the year is 2144, and fabricated being Sonmi 451 escapes a life of servitude and learns the horrifying plight of her cloned kin. A century later, after the fall, the post-apocalyptic tribes people worship Sonmi, while a mysterious race known as the Prescients seek to discover the secrets of their land.
So yeah, 6 stories all overlapping. Kind of like I said, thematically, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Structurally, Love Actually. Hugh Grant and all.
I will say this movie is impressively edited. because despite being 3 hours long, it clips along at a good pace. All of the stories are layered together in such a way that you never lose the thread of one as you flip into another one. And it very abruptly flips between the different time periods. And it all builds to this crescendo where everything kind of comes to a head all at the same time. And the tension is kind of held through all 6 of the stories. And it's really, really a feat. Like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You would almost think that it clips from one time period to the next too quickly, but it's done so masterfully that it doesn't you don't feel like you're getting whiplash at any point in time. You're just moving along super quick, and it doesn't even matter that you're going from like, you know, a period piece to like a sci-fi future or whatever. Like it all just kind of works together really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of voiceover of one character talking over footage from another storyline, and I think that helps smooth the transition and reinforce some of the ways in which these stories share narrative beats and thematic, you know, angles by having dialogue from the last scene play over the establishing shot of the next one.
Yeah, it's what they call it. Is it called a J cut and an L cut? And those, definitely help make the transition so much smoother rather than just like bang hard cuts. But yeah, I found myself, like I said, I was just kind of gripped by everything, and at no point was I was never bored. I was always interested in what was happening. I don't know if did you feel like you had a particular storyline that was one of your favorites, or did it all kind of work for you?
I liked them all in their own ways. I'll admit I'm a sucker for a good cyberpunk story. So the 2144 Neo Soul stuff spoke to me kind of in an interesting way, but I liked the post-apocalyptic stuff. I liked the 1800s stowaway story. I liked the weird 70s political thriller. I liked the quirky comedy of Timothy Cavendish and his misadventure in the old folks' home. And they were all so different and so similar at the same time in the way that they wove together. And again, it's a really well constructed film.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say I had a favorite. I definitely found myself... It took a while for me to get into the lawyer on a ship storyline, and I also, Scott, you were saying it was really easy to tell the difference. For the first little bit of the movie, I found it hard to distinguish the composer Frobisher from the lawyer on the ship, where I was like, a couple times I was like, it just took me a second to orientate myself. But overall, it was smooth, and I don't know that I had a favorite, but maybe the slave ship one was or the slave stowaway one was the least interesting to me. Though you do get wacky Tom Hanks poisoning a guy in a weird, as a weird doctor guy making weird laughs with a weird grin.
I kind of feel like the post-apocalyptic story was my least favorite. Even though it's sort of like pivotal to the climax, but I don't know. It's I guess I didn't love the production design of it. I didn't like the Halle Berry's makeup. I didn't like how the holograms were designed that she was using as her OS for whatever it was she was interacting with.
Yeah, they looked chunky.
The tribes people looked really good. But any of the feature stuff I kind of felt was, I don't know, it just felt a little bit boring to me. I think Timothy Cavendish is my standout of all of it. I really enjoyed that story, and Jim Broadbent is really good at carrying it, and I just kind of enjoyed that. And I like that his character throughout the different time periods had that similar sort of like, most of them had this sort of like selfish, greedy bent to them. So that was like, regardless of where he was in the time period, that's kind of just who he was. And his Timothy Cavendish was the sort of one that had a little bit of a redemption, or at least he kind of won at the end. I don't know if it was a redemption or not.
It is a little bit of redemption. he puts aside his selfishness to go back for Mr. Meeks.
Oh, right, yeah.
And takes a big risk to do that, so that he and the friends that fabricated the escape from the old folks' home can get out together. And ultimately, that leads him to put aside his lonely life and reconnect with his lost love.
Yep.
So he does have a redemption there.
I loved the future speak in the post-apocalyptic one. It was really well done. fake future English has changed over 200 years, and they're using words we recognize, but not quite. Definitely, I was watching it with subtitles on, and I'm glad I did. I think some of it would have got lost. But
it did for me.
Seeing it spelled out, it's like, that's actually really creative. I quite thought they did a good job with the fake future speak.
Yeah, I think I'd have to watch it a few more times for me to really like grok on it. Are either you guys fans of The Expanse?
I've read some of the books, but I have not gotten into the show, and that's a disservice to myself. From what I understand, the show is very good and actually cleans up some of the problematic parts of the book. Yeah,
there's like the inners and the outers in that show, and the people on the outer rim have this kind of almost Afrikaans-esque accent, but it's sort of like also kind of wholly original as well. And like, yeah, when you start watching this show, you kind of like, it's really hard to really pick up on what they're saying, but like because you're getting to watch it over several seasons, eventually you just kind of like pick it up and it's totally fine or whatever. So definitely, if like I had more time with this movie, I think I would be able to pick it up, but I got the broad strokes regardless.
Yeah, I agree with Liam, actually, because I also watched it with subtitles. Often when I'm watching in the evening, because we have the volume turned down not to wake the kids, we'll turn on the subtitles just so that it helps us follow in case we miss something. And I agree with Liam 100%. Seeing the post-apocalyptic future speak in the subtitles really made it much easier to understand.
Yeah, just a lot of great little choices in this. I guess I want to talk a little bit about how this is structured differently than the book, because we realized none of us read the book. But yeah, I think they made a sound choice, not trying to do it exactly how they do in the book. Because Greg, can you walk us through how they do in the book? You were the one who...
Yeah, so hopefully this is correct, because I read this from Wikipedia. So anyone who actually read the book, if we're wrong, just go ahead and correct us. But the book is structured so that it kind of starts out chronologically, and each story kind of leads from a character from the previous story into the character from who's sort of in the future in the next story, and that moves up chronologically. And then the story kind of comes to a head, and then it works itself backwards through the timeline and resolves each story in reverse chronological order. Whereas obviously this movie does not do that. It's everything's going all at once.
Yeah, which I think speaks to what Scott was saying about how like the climactic tension of all 6 stories hit at the same time. The like, oh, things look their lowest, the villain's gonna win, hit at the same time. I mean, the crossing the thresholds all kind of hit at the same, like, yep. Your story circle, your hero's journey, pay off at the same time. Because I think it'd be exhausting to watch a movie that hits that cycle 6 times in a row instead of 6 times consecutively.
Agreed.
Yeah, it might have been somewhat frustrating, especially as you like, because it introduces you to the rather wild sci-fi elements right away. It's actually the first thing you see, right? Is the future. Whereas, if you're watching them in chronological order, you'd go through a lot of like period pieces that are fairly grounded, and then suddenly you're in the future, and that might be a little bit of a kick, right?
You go right from Broadbent's nursing home hijinks to synthesized server people.
This is a good example of adaptation, and taking a great idea in a book and reimagining it for a visual medium like film. We're filming this during a thunderstorm, so if there's a little bit of thunder and lightning in the background, I apologize. But yeah, and it's like clearly the people who were adapting the film from the book, read the book, understood this was a literary choice, it's not necessarily going to work on film. How can we rework it so that it's kind of doing the same thing? It's still nesting the stories, but do it in a way that allows for a better film experience. And I think they made a good choice here.
So Tom Hanks doesn't play the same 6 characters in the book?
I'm assuming not.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to be a hard thing to get across in the book. But in a way that adds a different kind of story to it, because by linking all those characters through Tom Hanks, there's this almost theme of karma that gets baked into the story in this iteration of it. And you see how like a miserable character in a future life gets karma for being a miserable person and pays off that kind of karmic debt and ultimately goes on to be a better person. And there's the theme that Sonmi hits upon of like undying love, of love that lasts beyond one lifetime. And she's speaking to the archivist who's played by Sixsmith's character, who had that love in a previous lifetime, and it speaks to him. Like it touches him right in his soul. And he becomes her first true believer, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that I don't know that the book could necessarily get across that does get across in the film. And I say that without, again, having read the book, so I can't say for certain that's the case. But it's definitely something the film can communicate visually that the book is going to have to work a different way to tell kind of those same stories, right?
Yeah. And whatever doesn't get done by having the same actor play different people gets done by having like artifacts show up from time period to time period. Because I'm pretty sure the little blue gem that Apocalypse Tom Hanks has around his neck is a cufflink that's stolen in the first story.
Yep.
Yeah, so. And then there's lots of details like that.
Yeah, I'm sure this movie would benefit from a quick rewatch because there's probably a lot of little nuggets like that you could pick up throughout.
So I'll be honest, that was my biggest problem with it, and I'm not even worried about tiptoeing into fixes because I don't know how you fix it because it's cooked into the premise. But the only thing that kept this from being like a 4.5, 5-star movie for me was there were so many details in the background, so many little things I know I'm supposed to be watching for, meta connections that I know they've added, trying to parse what actor is under what gaudy makeup, that I was never 100% fully invested in this movie the way a good movie just sucks you into its world. There was always 5% of my brain or more trying to like figure out if that's Susan Sarandon dressed like an old man scientist.
Spoiler, it was.
It was, yeah. Like, or like at one point, the actress who played Sun-Mi, Bae Duna, plays a young Irish woman, like a young, like redheaded white woman, who then later is revealed as an adult to be Susan Sarandon. And I'm like, is that Susan Sarandon in like young person Marvel kind of like Tony Stark's dad makeup? Or no, it's the Asian lady. Okay, it was distracting. The knowing there were meta texts I was missing and would have to watch a second time to get them all. Without it, you don't get the premise, but it did distract me quite a bit.
Well, I guess that brings us to the makeup overall, which, I mean, leads us to the worst choice in the film, which is obviously the yellow face.
Look, I don't want to play devil's advocate. It's not a good choice. She just shouldn't have done it. But this, I was trying to be like, what is the train of thought that got them there that made them no one think this is a bad idea? And it has to be, look, every actor is going to be playing at least 6 characters, right? Or not at least 6 characters, but like many, many characters. There's going to be people swapping genders, people changing their age. Why wouldn't you just lump race in there if it's like, if you're going to play everything from the boogeyman to a 70s hitman, why couldn't you have an Irish or an Asian actor play a young Irish woman and have a white guy play an Asian? Oh, that's where the problems start, you know. Yeah, that I have to believe that's how they got there. Was they were just like, look, everyone's playing everything, so it's all fair game.
Yeah,
and it's not.
I just like I don't see the benefit of having them in the Asian makeup at all.
Yeah,
like just in story wise, I don't think it makes a difference. Like I get that it's New Soul and stuff, but like I think if you wanted to do that, it'd just be like, there's just white people in New Soul or whatever.
Yeah,
like
I actually
think
that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not. Yeah. I can kind of see how they calculate it, but like really even beyond that, like taking like the sort of like the sort of racism stuff out of it for just a moment, like even if it wasn't that wasn't a problem, it still looks weird. It looks so weird and it's so distracting. Like I know that that's a white guy in Asian makeup. There's like, I can't believe that they put them in the makeup and nobody said, this doesn't work.
Yeah, this doesn't look good.
It does not work at all.
There was 4 or 5 other screen tests where it looked worse, and this was the best.
Yeah.
The best of all the options.
Yeah, I agree with Greg wholeheartedly. I think the choice here would have been just, there's some white people in Seoul, just don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Easy solution. Yeah, and it just what a whiff, and it's too bad too, because I think it's a black mark on an otherwise pretty great movie, right?
Yeah,
which is really unfortunate. And like I don't know, like there's always a risk with any makeup job, be it aged makeup or whatever. Like sometimes those are pretty distracting as well.
I was gonna say, yeah,
some of the makeup that Tom Hanks had on with certain characters also looked weird and a little distracting, and some of the aged makeup looked really strange. Was Bey Doona at one point playing like a Latina? I think.
Yeah,
yes,
like an old
right, and like that one
is like
that one also looks super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even some of the aged ones where they all look like Johnny Knoxville and Bad Grandpa. Or that, I think you should leave sketch where he's like, I got too much shit on. I got too much shit, man. I don't want to be around anymore. Like, it was a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a bit of a risk when you're your best bet is to get age appropriate actors. And I guess I get with the premise what they're going for. Not possible. So I kind of understand it. Like, I mean, with certain characters, like they just ended up playing like their own age throughout the most, like the Robert Forbush guy, right? And that worked fine. Like there was no problem with that. But like, when you've got Susan Sarandon and all sorts of like weird makeup and stuff like that, like it gets weird.
Now, Ben Whishaw does play an old woman at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, does he?
He plays
I did not catch that.
He plays Cavendish's brother's wife.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There was a great if you watch because we all watch this on Netflix. That's where you can stream it if anyone wants to watch it. Had to click watch credits because but part of what was distracting me throughout the movie was they need to, when they go to the credits and it says Tom Hanks' name, they need to give me quick images of everyone Tom Hanks was,
and they
do. Yeah, and the whole movie, I'm like, they better do this, because if I have to go and find some listicle where someone took the time to do it, on AV Club and show me all the things, if I have to look up an internet slideshow for this, I'm gonna be annoyed. And you didn't have to, so that was good. But it was, back to the Yellowface stuff. There wasn't just the New Soul stuff. There was like a racial undertone kind of to a lot of the stories. And other than the slave one, I didn't know why it needed to come up. Like the fact that they call Bey Doona in her Latina makeup, they use a slur for Mexicans. There's a whole weird thing when the boogeyman is telling Apocalypse Tom Hanks, it's like, you want to get your dick wet in that prescient. She ain't even the same color as you. I'm like, it's 200 years in the Apocalypse future and still the boogeyman's hung up on race mixing. Like, there was a racial undertone to many of the stories that maybe just didn't need to be there.
But that's part of the through line of the story, though, right? Because it's one act of kindness, in spite of institutionalized racism, that starts toppling over the dominoes that lead to ultimately saving mankind. So, like, the fact that and it's always a bad guy. It's always a villain who's racist in these. And I think that's part of the story that it's telling.
Yeah, I think it can still tell the rich, meaty story it's telling without any of the racial undertones, save for the slave stowaway thing, because that's cooked into the
and story. One might argue also the fabricated people in 2144 is also a kind of a racism story.
I suppose, yeah. Would that have changed if they were, like, maybe that was the reason they felt they wanted to put everyone in Asian makeup, like, make the movie be racist so the characters are, this is Asians oppressing other synthetic Asians. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Tough to say what the thought process was there.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, like you said, a black mark on an otherwise brilliant film.
Yeah, the thing is, like, and that's a production design choice. That's an easy thing to fix or change. The problem with this movie, though, is that if you want to structurally change anything, the whole thing falls apart. Like, I can't imagine pulling on any thread in this movie because the whole thing would unravel. And that's just how tight it is and how integrated all the stories are.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine pulling out the Frobisher story?
I don't think you can pull out any one story. I'm wondering if you could pull out nuggets of each. Like, it would take a real, and maybe we should have done our homework, but it would take going through with a real fine-tooth comb to find some of the sort of, like, scenes that were forced to get a connection made and no other reason that we found no problem in Love Actually. I think they'd be harder to find here and would take a couple rewatches to be like, oh, actually, you didn't need the scene where I'm thinking of one where I think it was Cavendish is talking to like 4 people in bad grandpa makeup, and that's where the his brother's wife comes out and just says hello, just to have what is it, Wishaw as a lady.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
it's like we never see that character again. She's just there to be look, we put Wishaw in a dress.
Not true.
I wonder if there's a couple of those you could pull out.
Because his brother tricked him into signing himself into the old folks' home because he had slept with his wife.
Right. She does. We need to see.
So that is something we need to see. Yes. See, again, it's really tightly together.
And those two characters are somewhat connected because of the
link to the previous life with Frobisher and Ayers. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
I think that just kind of proves your point, Liam.
I started
when you start releasing threads. Yeah, it makes our job. I don't know what's the word. Impossible. That's what I think. The second half of this podcast is going to be wild.
Yeah. Well, let's say we get to that second half then. Let's hear from our friends at the Alberta Podcast Network.
This episode of I Have Some Notes is brought to you by Alberta Blue Cross. Life as a business owner can be hectic, to say the least. Alberta Blue Cross understands that. They offer flexible health, dental, life, and disability coverage for your employees. Even better, you can let your staff enroll and manage their coverage at any time on any device. That makes life easier for them and for you. You've got this when it comes to group coverage for your small business, and Alberta Blue Cross has got your back. To learn more and explore your options, head to ab.bluecross.ca. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your internet, electricity, and natural gas from. Park Power has low overhead, which in turn allows them to offer low competitive rates. Reach out for a no-obligations comparison by emailing estimates at parkpower.ca. If you decide to switch, it's easy. It's really just a change to your billing, and you can feel good knowing you're helping give back to our communities with your utilities bills. Learn more right now at parkpower.ca.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We are talking Cloud Atlas. This is going to be a tough one to fix, because there's a lot of bold choices were made that make it integral, and a lot of narrative threads unravel quickly if you tug on them too hard. So I'm going to start us off with a quick, easy fix that would have taken away my biggest problem with it, which was the distraction of the meta. Scott, off the top, he said it was a very well-edited film, and I would be inclined to agree. But yet, I want it edited even better. I would love slightly more lingering shots on items that are carrying over from one storyline to another. I'd like them just a little more obvious. And I'm surprised I'm saying that, because usually I love when movies don't dumb down for their audience. I like it when a movie, makes you work for it, makes you think about it. But in this case, it's just like, if they had used some visual film language stuff to like drive home that like, you've seen this artifact before, or yep, that is Hugo Weaving under the boogeyman makeup. Take a good look, make sure you know it's Hugo Weaving so we can move on and you don't spend this whole scene going, is that Hugo Weaving or one of the black guys? Like, I can't tell who that is. Is it, or is this an actor I haven't seen yet? Is it, just take away some of that mystery so that I'm not distracted by it. And I think that could be done with just really deliberate, lingering editing.
There's one scene that sticks out in my mind where Sixsmith, as an old man in the 70s, is reading one of Frobisher's letters from the 30s. And there's this transition where we go from Frobisher searching his room to half the room turning into Sixsmith in his hotel room in the 70s. And then the other half of the room also transitions. So we get this lingering shot of the two of them separated by their time periods, but sharing the same space. And I'm wondering if we could have had a little more of that in the movie. Creative ways to have the characters share the space with one another a little bit as we transition from one time period to another.
Yeah, I think that's the better articulated version of what I was hoping to see. Those things that just like show you the parallels a little more clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only real minor quibble I can think of that would qualify as, a note, would be maybe for the two future time periods. If aesthetically, the New Soul time period looked more, Blade Runner than it does, like super high-tech future.
Like Tron?
Yeah, that's probably a good way of putting it. Then I feel like that would have meshed and married a little better with the rest of what was going on. I think having it feel a bit more grounded would definitely make it feel less of a speed bump when you're going from one to the other. Now, I mean, as I said before, the movie does a good job of getting you introduced to the sci-fi moments earlier, so it's not too much of a problem. But I don't know. I just would have liked to have seen that, just like a little bit more of a grim, grittier kind of take on it. And I think that would have worked much better, and I think it would have actually suited the story a little bit more, because a lot of it looks a bit too clean for that. It's a pretty hellish story when you think about it. Like, they're replicating servants, and then they're eating them afterwards, right? Like, it's horrifying, and yet things just look a little bit too. I understand the contrast between the when they're serving, everything's like nice and clean, and then it drops, and you get sort of realistic, you get the reality of what's going on underneath it. That's a cool visual language thing, but yeah, I don't know.
I want to just add in, while it's very obvious in the 2144 time period, and ultimately the post-apocalyptic time period, the strong eating the weak metaphor and the actual cannibalism running through all the time periods. Like at one point, Cavendish even shouts Soylent Green is people, as a joke. Yeah. And it's just like, that shows the kind of like thought and care that went into them threading these narratives through all these time periods.
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's another example of just something I wanted spelled out a little more for me. Frobisher's Cloud Atlas Sextet. How often does that show up as a leitmotif throughout the movie.
I would not be able to tell you how it sounds off the top of my head. The music in this movie is fine, but kind of forgettable. And I think that sextet should have been front and center. It should have been a leitmotif running through all 6 stories. It should have been really prominent, and it should be unforgettable. And I think, especially for a movie that's named after it, the movie is named Cloud Atlas. It's named after his masterpiece. The music should have been right in my face the whole time and should have wowed me the whole time.
Yeah.
And really fun opportunity to play with, like, if you've got that leitmotif, what does it sound like on 18th century violin? What does it sound like on a 70s electric guitar? What does it sound like on a synthesizer in neo soul? What does it sound like on bongo drums in the Apocalypse? Like,
no, legit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which they might have been doing, but it just wasn't distinguished enough for me to recognize it from place to place.
Now that I think about it, I couldn't say thing one about the score of this movie.
Which is a shame, because it should be it should be such a big part of this, because one of the stories is about the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my note. That was actually my note. My note was more music, was better music. Up the score, put it right in my face, make it like big and bold and unforgettable.
Yeah, so easy to connect all 6 with one. That's the one thing that's consistent in all 6 of them. Like, didn't mean to steal your note, but
no, but it's very telling. We both hit upon the same issue with the score, is that it's very forgettable, and it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it. I'm glad you guys brought it up, because it's a great point that it does need to be. It would serve the movie extremely well if it had a very strong backbone of music. Other than that, I'm stumped, guys. I can tell you.
Yeah, make some better choices with your makeup. Get
the music.
Bring the music up. Make it more front and center. Maybe a little bit, like, just tweak the editing a little bit so that it's a little smoother. There you go. We fixed the movie, guys.
Yeah. They aren't all page 1 rewrites.
Look, this is Interstellar all over again, where someone pitches a movie to us and we watch it and it turns out to actually be really good, and we spend most of the time just talking about how great it was.
I got another one. I got another one now that we got talking about it. I'm thinking of things. I was trying to go back on things I couldn't quite remember, or parts in the early part of the movie that were fuzzy or weird. It does start by showing you it does the thing where it shows you the end of a lot of these stories. You see Frobisher going to kill himself. You see Old Man Apocalypse Tom Hanks. Mm-hmm. I wonder if how much do you think things would have changed if they hadn't done the classic show you the last scene first and then build to how we got there cliche, if they had cut that and just started where they all start? Like, if we didn't have Old Man Tom Hanks going, you want to know about the before times? Ooh, I tell you, there's a before times. I'd tell you a story. I got a scar on my face. How'd I get this scar? You'll find out in 3 hours.
I like that, because it gives you one solid hook for each of the 6 stories, so that you're instantly like, what's going on there? What's this about? Why is that guy killing himself? Like, and so you're immediately like, okay, and then it takes us back to the beginning for all of them. And now there's the question of, like, how did Louisa find this mystery? What's going on with the suicide? It all kind of blossoms from this, like, initial, like, wham moment for each of them.
Yeah.
So, I see why they did it.
I can't remember the wham moment for most of the story. Like, what was the first thing we see with Cavendish?
It's him talking about how he wasn't expecting his author to throw a man off a balcony at a party.
Yeah, but that's at the beginning of his story. I don't know if there was I'm not sure that we saw the end of all the stories. I don't think they do it for all of them.
Yeah. No.
Right? Like, we don't see lawyer buddy sweating it out from poison.
Yeah, and we see Louisa talking about the murder of Sixsmith, but it's not, like, late in her story. It's kind of in the middle. But it's a hook. It's getting us invested right away.
then yeah, I think I'd need to change how I think about it. It's not the like, oh, here's the ending first. It's a hook of each. Yeah.
And I see why they did it, because if they had started cold on all 6 stories, I think that actually would have been very hard to get invested in. But by like hitting us right up front, boom, 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 these are these 6 stories, this is what they're about. You're instantly like, all right, I'm curious, go on. You've got my attention.
Yeah, it's also kind of setting the stage for how the rest of the movie is going to be edited. So it's giving you a pretty quick palate cleanser. Like, okay, here's what's going to happen. This is the clip we're going to move at, and just dive in. Like, we're going to be moving from place to place very quickly. So get used to it, kind of thing. So I think it does set that stage quite well.
Well, I'm glad I asked, but I think you're right. It's not a problem.
I think. Oh. It's like most of my stuff is mostly like cosmetic with this one. I just don't. I don't know if I'm skilled enough to really like start picking this movie apart from a structure point. You know, maybe if we do this podcast for another 6 years, we'll come back to Cloud Atlas and I'll give it another shot. But
well, and it might help if, you know, to go and read the story. And then, like, be able to come at it. Because I've certainly on previous episodes been the guy who's been like, well, actually in the book. And I don't have the power to do that this time because I have not read it. But there could be choices that are in the book that you would be able to look back on the movie and say, oh, you know what? This maybe was done better in the book. Or you could have done this that was done in the book. Or maybe this happened in the book and it wasn't in the movie. And that's something that maybe should have been in the movie. But unfortunately, we're not in a position to speak from that because all of us came into this movie first. So,
this might be a bit of a tangent, but like when you do watch a film that's based on a book, does that hinder or help your experience with the film?
How do you mean? Like a book I've read or haven't, or like
like a book that you've read and then you watch the film?
It depends on the quality of the film. Like there are film adaptations of books that I've read that I quite enjoy. And even if they're quite different from the book, I understand the choices that were made, that obviously an adaptation on film is going to necessarily be different than the book version. But if the movie's just also bad, like it will leave a bad taste in my mouth if it's a book that I liked. So,
you know, I'm a little embarrassed to say I managed chapters in Indigo for about 5 years of my working life. I am an avid reader, used to be a much more avid reader, but almost everything I read was nonfiction. I honestly don't think I could other than like I read a bunch of the comics the MCU is now based on. I don't think I've ever read a book that then got turned into a movie that wasn't a comic book. So I truly couldn't tell you, because I'm like I have read so few fiction novels that Scott Pilgrim versus the World is about the only one where I can like.
I like, for me, there's an element of distraction to it. I remember I had read The Fellowship of the Ring right before the movie had come out, and while I still enjoyed it very much, the Peter Jackson's film, but I was spending a lot of time thinking about the differences between the book and the movie, like, oh, Tom Bombadil's not showing
so it'd
up.
be like, where's Tom Bombadil?
Yeah, like stuff like that, you know. And it's a credit to Peter Jackson. That film, like, visually, it was very similar to how I visualized the story in my mind's eye when I was reading it. He did a masterful job, and also that's owing to Tolkien and his immense amount of detail that he pours into his books, right? And I found that with other books that I've read that have turned into movies, like The Martian comes to mind, where the mode of storytelling is effectively quite different on film than it is in the book. And it's just like, I'm just kind of watching it going like, I like this movie, but it doesn't give me the same thrill that the book does, just because it can't tell the story in the same way. Like, just like on film, it's just you're not in the Martian's head exploring ideas and solutions with him, right? Like you're just kind of watching him do it, which is quite a bit different. So yeah, it's just it's just interesting. Or those cases of like World War Z where you're just watching this like this has nothing to do, to do with the book, so I'm along for the ride, I guess. This is interesting, but yeah, the book has nothing to do with the book at all.
I'm like, what other books have I tried to read A Clockwork Orange, and speaking of future speak, that book is unreadable. I don't know how that is still in print, because it is gibberish start to finish, and I got maybe 8 pages into it before I was like, this is nonsense. I don't want to,
It's like,
speaking of nonsense, we got some great
what a segue
from our listeners. What a segue indeed. Of course, we love reading your comments here on the show. We solicit them on our Facebook page, over on our Twitter at I Have Some Notes, and on Instagram at I Have Some Notes Pod. You comment, we read them, we riff on them. It's like you're here on the show. Let's get into it. Tack says, being a cishet white guy, I feel unqualified to comment on the, shall we say, race bending. But if we agree it's a problem, maybe the solution is make it more surreal. Have a different actor play the part until they do something that sparks a connection. Then switch out the actor without the makeup, establishing that it's not diegetic. Interesting. So be like, yes, this is the guy, but we're not going to make... Okay, cool. I see where you're going with that. Tack continues... On that note, make them recurring characters actors a little more similar to themselves. Give us something to latch onto besides the fact that they're the same actor. Similar traits, lines, and or flaws. Something that suggests they are, in a way, the same person.
I feel that they are.
Yeah.
Like, there's enough connective tissue that I read the connections between those characters based on the actors that they were playing. Or being played by, rather. And a lot of it was subtext, and a lot of it was like in reading the metaphors and the through lines from the film. But I felt there was connective tissue between those characters.
Yeah. It kind of switches between, like, you know, a character being similar in mannerisms and tone and how they act, as well as being just similar in just like how their plot and story kind of works around. So there's differences between the connections, and I think if you're hoping for more, I don't know, like a more smooth connection, I get that might be frustrating because you are having to spend a lot of time. Like, the movie's moving pretty fast, and you're having to spend a lot of time thinking about those connections. And for some of the characters or some of the actors' line of characters, I didn't really see the connection. For example, like Susan Sarandon's, I didn't really find a through line through them. Most of the time, I didn't notice who was Susan Sarandon, to be honest. So that's probably why. Another reason why sometimes the makeup is sort of like a hindrance to this movie than helping it.
Well, and Susan Sarandon's maybe not the best example because she's very much a side character. Yeah. I'm thinking more for like the primary characters, for like Ewing and Frobisher and Sixsmith and Sonmi. Like, they're all and Zach. They're all characters who like are like main front and center characters through every story, and I really felt the connection between all of them in all the time periods much more than Susan Sarandon or unfortunately, and I'm sad to say, the great Keith David, even though it was nice to see them pop up again and again.
Mm-hmm. As if he's here commenting with us. Tack follows up. I've heard people trying to draw character arcs throughout these timelines, but I just don't buy it. Maybe I didn't pick up on all the nuances, but I'm not going to go back and check.
You should go back and check, Tack.
You know, I'm with Tack. I like this movie. I might watch it again, but I'm not going to watch it again anytime in the next couple weeks to go back and get all the things I missed. It's not that good, and they're not that interesting. And again, feeling like I'm missing stuff on as I'm watching this, I can tell it would halfway through this movie, I could tell it would behoove me to give it a second pass, and that sort of annoyed me. that I'm like, there's no way to get everything on the first go.
I don't mind a movie that does that.
Movie.
And Wachowski movies are often movies that benefit from a rewatch. Like even The Matrix benefits from a rewatch because there's stuff you're going to miss. Because there's stuff you're going to miss on the first pass.
Yeah.
But I could see going to see Matrix twice in the theater in one weekend a hell of a lot more than this. You know,
fair. This is a much more ambitious and much more heady bit of speculative fiction than the Matrix, and The Matrix is already pretty heady speculative fiction. So yeah, I can see why this one's more challenge. And I don't take this the wrong way. This is a more challenging watch than The Matrix, and I can see why that makes it less. It makes it feel more like work to go back and watch it, because it's less popcorny. That's kind of where I'm going with that. I fully intend to watch this movie again, for the record.
Side note, I'm quick. I think Tack is quickly becoming one of the people that I'm most excited to see comment, because it's always thoughtful and insightful. So yeah, thanks for bringing that stuff to us, Tack.
Oh yeah, I might not always agree with you, but you definitely bring up good discussion. So
yeah.
Muncie comments, well, it's a Wachowski joint, so have we considered making it bigger and more gay?
This is already both big and gay. I don't know how you could do more.
Yeah. I hate your taste in movies comments. I love a movie that takes a big swing, even if it doesn't always work out. The Wachowskis are nothing if not ambitious. But the yellow face.
Yeah. We've commented on many of their previous films how they're fond of making big choices, and they don't always work. But I respect that they make choices, because there are a lot of directors who don't, and they're very forgettable directors, and some of them make very big movies for very big IPs that are owned by multi-billion-dollar megacorporations. And it's just...
I guess it should... To a certain extent, it's also like the studios won't let them make those big decisions, which is unfortunate.
So it's nice when a director has the opportunity to make big choices, and I respect it even if it doesn't always work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I watched this over,
and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that the yellow face makeup was meant with the best of intentions. I think Liam really hit the nail on the head, walking us through what he thinks the thought process was there, and it was not meant maliciously. And I earnestly believe that, but it was definitely the wrong choice and a problematic choice.
Yeah, I mean, having Hugo Weaving sing the song from the Aristocats was maybe a little a bridge too far, but no, I'm just kidding. Of course that does not happen. Mass Debaters says Cloud Atlas is a very underrated movie.
I would agree.
I think so, yeah. I mean, we talked about the ratings for it on Rotten Tomatoes as well as the user ratings, and I think we're all in agreement that it's fair that it's pretty underrated. And like we said earlier, like if a lot of people went back to it, I think they might feel a little bit differently about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of challenging movie that in 10 years ago when it came out, or today, there's going to be just a certain set of movie viewers who are just not willing to put the effort into a movie like this.
Yeah, to engage with it on its own level, really. Yeah.
Speaking of, Dan Brodrib comments, I'm not sure it needs fixing. To me, it's more of a personal artistic statement than a commercial film. That means I engage with it on its own terms. I can like it or hate it and have all the opinions in the world about it, and I have many of them with this film, but I am not entitled to demand changes or tell them they should have done this or that unless they specifically ask. So other than maybe some cosmetic defect stuff, I wouldn't dream of messing with it.
I think that's kind of where we all fell on this for the most part.
Other than the entire premise of our podcast.
Yeah, it was like a massive deconstruction.
Even though absolutely nobody asked us to do this. Yeah. I was thinking back to my first appearance as a guest when we did Rogue One, and excited as I was to be on the panel, I'm like, who are we to tell Disney how to make their stupid Star Wars movie 4 years after it came out? Like, what is it? No, but
well, and I've even said before, we're working from the benefit of hindsight, which these directors and producers and editors and actors did not have at the time they were making this film.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look, this is an exercise in fun and an exercise in creativity. It is not. We are not sending our notes to Hollywood, nor are we, tagging the directors in our podcast advertisements, being like, "Hey, listen to this and maybe think about things next time." It's just a creative exercise that's fun. It has nothing to do with trying to be hubristic about our ability to create movies, which none of us have made. Right? So, but fair. Like, speaking of insightful comments, I think that's a fair way of looking at it, and it's hard to argue with it.
And that concludes our episode on Cloud Atlas. We got a couple more left in the season. So again, keep your eyes peeled to our social media for commenting on the last couple movies we're going to do for this season. And of course, wherever it is you are listening to this episode, please give us a like, a subscribe, a review. Those comments really do help us out, and the algorithm too.
Yeah, do you like stories that just like move all over the place and go all over everywhere all the time? Well, you might want to check out Quantum Kickflip, which is Liam's other podcast, which is also on the Alberta Podcast Network. 6 Edmonton comedians play Slug Blaster, a sci-fi tabletop role-playing game developed right here in Alberta. You can check it out right now at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
And in 2 weeks, tune in for Ocean's 8.
Wait, I didn't get any note that we needed to watch Ocean's 8. What's up with that?
Oh, you didn't? I'm sure I sent it. Maybe it went somewhere else. Maybe that email went somewhere else. I guess we'll have to see.
Well, until then, I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the clouds.